Welcome, everybody, to Catholic Nerds Podcast, episode number 2. This is Scott Smith.
I'm Cody Reed.
And Colby Allen.
And we're going to start out today's episode with a new segment that Cody has come up with. Cody, you want to give us the deets?
Yeah. We're calling this segment What You Reading? And the title is based off of Isabella from Phineas and Ferb. Isabella is Phineas and Ferb's neighbor, and she has a huge crush on Phineas, and so she would always come over, and the first line she would always say in basically every single episode is, "What you doing?" So that's where that came from. And so basically the segment is for us to talk about some of the things that we are reading right now. Some of the things for enjoyment, for education, for theological advancement, for whatever purpose we're reading them for. But to share some of the things that we are taking into ourselves and allowing to help form us through our exploration of the written word.
Awesome. So who wants to go first? Cody, you wanna start it out?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure y'all probably hear the crying in the background, and I apologize for that.
There was wailing and gnashing of teeth.
Exactly. That's what happens. Wailing and gnashing of teeth.
So long as the teeth have come in, yeah.
Right. They're all there. We're just gnashing them out. Well, the first thing that I'm working on a few different things right now, mostly, comics, because, I'm just that kind of nerd. I'm almost completely caught up with The Walking Dead graphic novel. And there's so many differences between the shows. So if anybody wants to talk about The Walking Dead, I'm with you there.
Dude, I bought my volume 26 today. That's a trade paperback.
I have to buy volume 29 and volume 30. So it's so good. But then I'm also reading, just started the Wolverine and the X-Men and the Old Man Logan series, which Wolverine is my favorite comic book character of all time. So I'm pretty excited to be kind of just going through his life or different lives, depending on which storyline you're following.
So not to sidetrack, but have you delved into the rumors that he may appear in Endgame?
Dude, I'm the one who started those rumors.
You're the one.
Yeah, that was me. No, I've been really excited about it. I think it's the only reason that Marvel had any purpose of buying Fox was so that they could bring Wolverine into it. But yeah, no, that is one of the theories that I started as soon as I heard that Marvel was buying out Fox. I was like, it's because they want to bring Wolverine in. And then there's the fact that my boy done said that he would only come back as Wolverine if he was doing the Avengers. So like it left it open to that possibility, and so I'm pretty pumped about it. I am really excited about it, and the fact that Wolverine is a constant character in the Avengers comics. Like he's known as like he's been on every superhero team there is. Basically.
Yeah, his first introduction was in the Incredible Hulk, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct. It was a Wolverine versus Hulk comic.
Yeah. So I was disappointed when they went into Wolverine's background the first time around with Ninja Wolverine, and now I thought it was really cool that he was old and with his regenerative capabilities, and fought in the Civil War or whatever.
The one you're mentioning, the first time they went back, that's actually the second time they went back. So there was Wolverine Origins, which they didn't go back to his samurai days. But in Days of Future Past, and then in The Wolverine.
Right.
The Wolverine is when they really went to Japan, and which that is a common thread in Logan's story, is that he spent years in Japan, and he is a master of the art of samurai.
The rage of Wolverine and the stoicism of the samurai just never really jived to me.
Well, that's why he did that. That's why he became a samurai, is because of his rage. So he wanted to learn to control his rage. So that's why he practices the samurai. Now, unfortunately, has this mutant ability in a way called thing called Berserker, in which he cannot control his rage. So
well, that works.
Yeah, exactly.
It definitely comes out in Logan, the more recent movie.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I'm reading is, to digress from comic books a little bit, because I definitely want to regress to comic books. I'm reading Father Donald Calloway's No Turning Back. It's his autobiography of his spiritual journey, kind of like a Thomas Merton 7-Story Mountain,
right?
All his wayward years, and I'm really still in the wayward years, so I haven't really gotten to the conversion yet. But it's very good, and one of the reasons I'm reading it, he's going to be a future guest on this podcast. Mm-hmm. But also he's speaking at the Men of the Immaculata Men's Conference this year, so lots of reasons I need to study up on his background. But right. He very cool story so far. He was, cool in the context of conversion, but he was child of some Navy, an officer and an enlisted person in the Navy, and moved to Japan and kept up his surfer. He was a surfer in California and then moved to Japan. Got involved in drug trafficking, stealing, and was eventually deported from Japan. Japan kicked him out, and
which, from what I understand, is not that difficult to do. But
have you done that too?
No.
But yeah, very interesting story. I just finished the part, spoilers, where he talks about when he woke up one morning with a massive Grateful Dead tattoo on his back. Okay. He had been following he had been one of the Deadheads following the Grateful Dead tour for like 6 months, like starving and psychedelic all the way. And he just, woke up one morning with that Grateful Dead tattoo and keeps it. So he has like physical proof of his wayward years. But yeah, he's working on a new book, which hopefully he'll tell us more about in that upcoming podcast. That'll be in March. But he describes it as a game changer. He's written other books like Champions of the Rosary, things like that. That's the only title that I remember offhand. I'll add some in the notes. But this one, as he said, is going to be in a different league than his other books. So looking forward to seeing what that's going to be about.
Do you have a general idea what it's about or no?
He said in his email that he kind of sent out to his followers, lastly, please pray for me as I work on a very special project. I can't give the details yet, but when it is finished, it's going to be a game changer. Seriously, I am not kidding. I've been working on it for a year now, and it'll take another year until it's available. Available January 1st, 2020. It's so big and important that I plan to get on Facebook sometime in fall 2019 to begin promoting it. I ditched Facebook 3 years ago because I wanted to focus on my prayer life. And now I believe Jesus and Mary want me to get back on Facebook, good Lord, in order to get people ready for what I'm working on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is going to be a mega weapon for Catholicism. And he said in the email to me, he said it's going to rock souls.
Rock souls.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that sounds promising.
Yeah.
So, I guess we'll wait till Cody gets back to finish talking about comics and stuff. But what you reading, Colby?
So I usually have 2 different books that I'm going through at once. My current trend is I use Audible a lot.
Yes.
So I'm sitting at a desk for 6 to 8 hours a day, and also commuting for a little over an hour a day. So it's not that difficult to go through several books within a month. anyways, I always try to do a fiction and then some type of enrichment reading. The fiction series I go through several times. An author named R.A. Salvatore. Mm-hmm. You ever heard of him?
Yeah, I had a book by him about it's like the 1,000 Orcs or something like that.
Yeah, so he's a pretty prominent fantasy writer. Very deep into the D&D realm. His series of books falls within what's called the Forgotten Realms.
That's the Forgotten Realms of D&D?
Uh-huh.
Gotcha.
So I want to say it's like him and 2 or 3 other core authors that write within a series. His main characters, specifically one, is a dark elf, and he kind of follows his adventures. So he's a dark elf who lives, in the depths of the planet. Comes out, and of course their race is known to be evil, and they're very hated. But he develops a reputation for being good, and it's all about his struggles trying to make friends on the surface, and then also going back to his hometown to face some of the crap that he dealt with. But anyways, R.A. Salvatore is a fantastic writer, and so very easy to get into. I remember the very first time I got one of his books.
How many has he written?
Oh, shoot. I want to say 12.
Okay.
And I have maybe half of what he's written. So he's got, I want to say, a little over 24 books published.
Okay. It's kind of like a Robert Jordan or George R. R. Martin kind of.
Yeah. So, I mean, he sold quite a number of printed books, and just recently, within the last couple of years, has an exclusive with Audible for some of his series. And his Audible publications some of them have over like 10,000 reviews.
Good Lord.
Yeah, so he's very, very well-known author.
And I interrupted you. You were saying the first time you picked one of his books up?
Oh, yeah. So I went to a used bookstore, found one of his books for like 50 cents off the bookshelf. And for the first time in my life, I read a fiction book in like less than 3 days.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, he is my favorite fiction author.
First cut is the deepest.
It is, and it's stuck pretty well. So the one I'm reading now is called Legacy, and it's about Drizzt, who
is it a new release?
No, actually, and even still, he started writing in the 80s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's been writing the same series for, I want to say, a little over 30 years.
Wow.
Because he just released the latest one August or October of this past year.
So some Catholics listening might be, you mentioning Dungeons and Dragons might be like, terrible.
Right.
What would you say about that?
Sure. So it's definitely not. It's kind of hard to say this. It's not on par with The Lord of the Rings or the Chronicles of Narnia when it comes to Christian themed fantasy or fiction.
Yeah.
However, I definitely will propose that following these few core key characters, he does focus on virtues. He focuses on what is good, and he kind of highlights, because part of the theme in his books also, at the beginning of most of the sections, is a personal journal from Drizzt. And so like the opening of the chapters is his journal as he writes about his inner conflict. He writes about the ways that he rejects his own people's evil, and how he's trying to find good and develop these friendships that help him become a better person. So even if it's not explicitly Christian, it does focus on virtues and good themes.
We're going to have a special episode like just on Lord of the Rings or just on... I mean, I've written... For my blog, I wrote like 10 different posts on all the Catholic symbolism, the Eucharistic symbolism, and then there's not as much in Lord of the Rings that's explicit, and I think Tolkien's even rejected some of the attempts to allegorize his work, but if you go into the Silmarillion, it's like in your face.
Right.
So we'll have to talk about maybe just a special episode on the Silmarillion, or
if you can get past the first 2 or 3 chapters of the Silmarillion.
Well, yeah, you gotta contextualize yourself a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, confession, I have not read all of Lord of the Rings, mainly because I got too bored by the time I was in the second book.
And the podcast goes dead.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so
I had to read through I had to force myself to read all the way through the first one. And then I was like, okay, maybe in the second one it'll get a little more exciting.
Sure.
But it was like watching grass grow.
Well, no. I mean, Frodo didn't go to Japan and become a samurai, you know.
Nope.
Exactly.
He didn't have an adamantine skeleton.
Exactly.
But what if he did?
No, I do want to add. So I remember
so much different.
I remember when The Hobbit came out, the movies, I was like, you know what? I haven't read The Hobbit in a long time. Let me reread the book before the movie comes out. And I remember reading it, and it was like, it was so simple. It was a kid's book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, The Hobbit compared to the rest of the books, it's pretty simple and boring. Like, I'm amazed they were able to stretch out that into 3 movies and actually
and they just added a bunch of blood and violence.
Yeah.
While taking away Tom Bombadil. That doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever.
No, but it's true. Like, when you read it, I mean, the whole battle with Smaug, when he flies out of the mountain and goes to the city, that whole scene in the book is 2.5 pages?
Yeah, had to incorporate some John Milton, Paradise Lost to round it out.
Yeah.
No, and I think you can make a comparison between Hobbit, Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings, and the Space Trilogy. Which, if y'all have read the C.S. Lewis Space Trilogy, it's pretty amazing because it's Tolkien. It's C.S. Lewis's treatment of original sin and worlds, planets without original sin. What would be the effect of that? And then he gets into Arthurian myth, and it just gets crazy and awesome.
Yeah. I haven't read them. One of my TOB classes, the instructor used, I forget which one it was. Yeah, Paralandra. With the illustrations of the different, characters of the angels and the interchange they have.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Illustrating masculine and feminine between them.
Oh, yeah. I missed that part completely. I have to reread it.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to go back and reread it, but I do remember him using that image in the class.
So, we'll have to we're going to talk a lot more about this in future podcasts and stuff, because this is all good material. Getting back to comics, the other thing I'm reading is, I should say stopped reading, is Dr. Aphra. Have y'all heard of that?
Nope.
No.
So I think it's what's his name? Gillum, as the guy who wrote the Darth Vader comics.
Okay.
Which are pretty good. I'm enjoying those. I'm reading those kind of simultaneously. And I was really excited. Dr. Aphra was given to me for Christmas, and I the second page, you've got a Wookiee fighting a Wampa. The snow beast. And I'm like, I'm sold. I'm in. I've been waiting for this. Who's going to rip off whose arm,
Right.
But then, as is so typical of comics, the last page, they've got to leave you with one little bit of they've got to make her sexuality an issue, right? They gotta she's not a complex enough character if she's straight. So the very last scene in the first volume I had of Dr. Aphra, she remarks about she saved this one Imperial's life because she was cute. And I was like, that's it. I'm done. Can't do this.
They get you to go through the whole thing and then just throw you off at the end.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Suck me in with...
Did y'all ever watch Avatar?
Mm-hmm.
Not the James Cameron crazy blue aliens, but I'm like the Avatar, Airbender.
Oh, yeah. I've seen the TV show.
So you watched the TV show, right?
Yeah, I haven't seen the M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, and he really screwed that one up. I walked out of the theater crying. I'm dead serious. We were so excited. We went to the midnight show, and I walked out kind of tearing up because of how bad it was. Okay, but because it has so much potential, because the show is so good. It sucked me in, and I was trapped. Okay, so I watched all of Avatar. It was so good, so amazing, and then it came out with The Legend of Korra. Okay, who is the next Avatar, right? And it's really, really good. And in the very last episode, it is revealed in quotations, that she is in love with another woman in the show. And it's like, wait, where did that come from? What was that? And you're just like, how can you, like, seriously?
Yeah.
Seriously? It's like J.K. Rowling saying that Dumbledore is gay. Like, you can't go back and then say, oh yeah, I always thought that, and make it true.
Yeah, retcon it.
You can't escape it now. Like, it's so norm for people to just throw those things out there with the expectation that you can't say anything contra. Because like even now, Valerie and I are encountering like going to these different websites or resources for marriage prep, and all the wedding planning websites.
What, does Celine Dion have a new ensemble that's genderless for the bride and groom?
I don't know. Like the website The Knot, for instance, right?
Oh, yeah.
So like you log into The Knot, you set up your page, and as you're going through the themes,
that's like a place to register for gifts or something.
Yeah, it's like a
place
generic
to register your wedding.
Yeah, you register your wedding.
Set up a page.
Put some details. You can take RSVPs. Like
a lot of vendors actually advertise through The Knot, so there's a lot of, you can go on The Knot and you can go through a bunch of different vendors for different things. Continue your story.
No, but like we're going through the themes to pick a theme for the website design, and at least a third of them are same-sex relationships. Just straight up on the main page of the website as you're looking at them. Like you just can't even get away from it.
That's just messed up. Now, not that isn't a fascinating topic, but
a little derailing. But
I haven't talked to anybody about this because no one else is interested, and y'all may not be either. But the M. Night Shyamalan trilogy, have y'all been hearing about this? That Unbreakable, and then massive spoiler alert: the movie Split.
Oh, the new one coming out.
No, well, there's going to be a new one. Split came out, let's see, I've actually got it up. Came out in 2017, 2016.
Oh, yeah. I do remember seeing Split. Glass is a new one coming out, right?
Exactly.
Well, we're talking about Unbreakable with Bruce Willis, right?
Right, Unbreakable, and then Split, you find out, is a prequel, I guess, to Unbreakable. And then Glass is about to come out, which brings together Glass, the Bruce, and the Samuel L. Jackson Glass character.
Samuel L. Jackson, yeah.
The Bruce Willis character, and then the James McAvoy. What's he, like, the Beast or something?
The Beast.
Yeah. So
he's Professor X, guys. Come on.
Oh, so many worlds combining.
Speaking of, I saw the trailer for the new Dark Phoenix movie too. So.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yes.
I've been meaning to buy the first appearance of the Dark Phoenix comic book, but I haven't gotten around to it. It's probably too late now.
Yeah. No, well, probably not, dude. You can probably find it. The way that I read the first 40 years of X-Men comics, okay? And the way that I did that was I have all digital versions.
Oh, so like Comixology?
No physical copy. Yeah, Comixology. I love Comixology. It's phenomenal. And now I'm going to the library and pulling different comics off the shelves there. But the way that I read the X-Men is they actually had for sale on, I think it was Amazon, one year, the first 40 years of X-Men comics, and that was my Christmas present one year.
Nice.
I was like, that's what I want, Ma. And she was like, okay. And so, boom. And I had the first 40 years of X-Men, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so good.
That takes you to, like, 2000, huh?
I think so.
Because it started in, like, mid-60s, right?
I want to say it was the mid-60s.
Yeah.
I'm not sure right now. Uh-oh.
But yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I have the trade paperbacks for a lot of those, but yeah, I've been kind of slow to do the digital. I guess I'm old-fashioned or something.
But yeah, another one that I'm reading right now is actually I mentioned Thanos, right? The storylines for Thanos. Just so I wanted to find out more about his character and like where he came from and how he developed, and so it's a really interesting storyline that he was born on this planet, and he was basically ostracized from the beginning because he looked different, and through his whole life, it's just a pursuit of knowledge.
They were racists,
right? Basically, which Marvel has that theme commonly through all of their stuff is, you shouldn't judge those who are different. That's most of
like
Marvel
the
comics.
mutants,
right. But basically, Thanos is on this inevitable search of knowledge, wanting to know the truth, wanting to know existence. But at the same time, he meets this girl very early in his life who he's always trying to impress. And it turns out that this girl is Mistress Death.
Dun dun dun.
I don't know if you know this, but Death is represented by a woman in all of it. Like throughout the whole Marvel universe, Death is a woman, and she always goes to. There's a couple of characters that she goes to, and Thanos is one of them, and so is Deadpool.
Oh yeah, is that Thanos' wife or something?
He calls her his mistress,
or the mother of his children.
He calls her his mistress. So he's not married to her, but he says my mistress, Death. And basically, in Thanos' sole purpose. In basically all of his travels is to please his mistress Death. Yeah.
Let's see. Is it Captain Marvel? See, because it's interesting because in DC, it's your typical Grim Reaper.
Right. And she actually looks like the Grim Reaper, except to Thanos and Deadpool. Okay. Well, actually, she prefers to appear as the Grim Reaper to Deadpool because Deadpool prefers it that way for some reason. I don't know. But then to Thanos, she appears as a woman, like with skin and all. But to Deadpool and to all others, she has no skin. Yeah.
Gross. What I'm thinking about as you're talking, so we were just mentioning Captain Marvel, or actually Marvel. Captain Marvel, like the older Captain Marvel's Captain Marvel, and so he and like is one of those kind of major milestones in comic book history, that the death of Captain Marvel, he actually dies of cancer, and comics, that was kind of the time of age of comics where they're only beginning to address kind of harder subjects like that. Like Green Arrow finds his sidekick like shooting heroin or something on the cover, and they were really starting to address some of these things. And so Captain Marvel dying of cancer, it makes me the cover you've got. It's kind of crazy. It's the Grim Reaper holding Captain Marvel in his arms, but if you look at it and just Google the death of Captain Marvel cancer, like cover image of the comic book, it's the Pieta. It looks exactly like the Pieta. It's like a little mirror image of it. I think Christ is facing the other direction, but yeah, it's even, how in Michelangelo's Pieta, I mean, yeah.
Wow.
Even
that is interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
It's just kind of weird. But even the elongation of the body, with the mannerism that Michelangelo, like Jesus would have had like extra vertebrae if he was that long, kind of thing. Yeah, it's kind of
and the Mary is huge. Or Death is huge.
Yeah, Mary is giant.
So here's a question: how do you see this stuff? Or how do you figure out, again, these different imageries between, I guess, modern secular pieces of art and sacred art images? Because I'm assuming, the writers, they are artists themselves, and so they don't, not everything they come up with is absolutely original, but I would never see this image and say, wow, that's the Pieta.
I feel like you're
question now I'm like, would I have seen it?
Too deep for
would I have seen it if not for Scott mentioning it there?
And I feel like the comic book artist is going to be like, nobody's going to know what I'm copying here.
Right. Or if you asked him that question, he'd be like, no, like that's not where it comes from. What are you talking about?
A rendition of it. Like, you can't negate it after seeing it.
Yeah, once you see it, it's kind of... Well, I mean, there's that old line. I think it was either Shaw or Oscar Wilde or maybe Vonnegut stealing it from them. He said that, the good artists will copy, but the greatest artists will outright steal. Or, in terms of writing, plagiarize.
Yeah.
Actually, now that you say that, in reference to my uncle, he has said, and I don't want this to go on too public, but he has told me there is no such thing as like a new theologian.
Or a new heresy.
Or new heresies, right? The only ones that are successful are those who paraphrase the best.
Yeah. I need to work on my paraphrasing skills.
I'm really curious in this cover thing now.
Well, it might be a good can write Jim Starlin if he's still alive. I don't know. Well, he might be the author, not the artist.
He actually is the artist too. It looks like. Yeah.
Oh, he is. Cool. I might email him and ask. It'd be really cool if he's like, no one's ever asked that before. I've been waiting. My whole life for somebody to say.
But no, it's true. I just opened a new window of my browser and put a Pieta next to that image, and it's almost a mirror.
It is flipped. Was I right about that?
No, it's not flipped.
Oh,
it's original.
Not? Okay, cool. Wow. One thing I'm sad to say about the Pieta, because a little backstory, I went to public school almost the whole way, and in high school, the only time religion was ever really discussed was in AP European history, and I had this amazing European history teacher, and she actually cried when she was describing the Pieta. Which, wow. In a public school, you're like, that's never going to happen, especially today. But when my wife and I went to Rome for our honeymoon to get the papal blessing on our marriage, we walked in St. Peter's, and I looked to my right, and I'm like, oh, that can't be the real Pieta. And I just kept walking. And I never came back to it. Like, it was super crowded and all that stuff, but I never came back to get within 20 feet of the thing. And so I'm a huge loser for that. Just
shame on you.
Yeah, I just needed to confess that. Appreciate y'all listening.
Oh man. So here's the question. Talk about going to Rome. True story. I remember, I don't know how long I want to stay on this, and a little off topic, but I don't know if you recall, but Ash and I went to BRCC at the same time.
Yeah, I was there for a little bit.
And I do remember...
For our listeners, that's Baton Rouge Community College.
Baton Rouge Community College. I remember we both were taking a history class at the same time, but it was a different history. And I'm still giggling about this.
Oh, no.
They, in her class, were talking about the Sistine Chapel, but in particular, I think the topic was nudity in art. And
that special artist that came around and drew little fig leaves or bits of cloth on all the private parts.
Yes.
Is that literally what you were gonna say? I was just
So they were talking about it, and she was like, "Yeah." She goes, "I can't believe they had nudity in the Sistine Chapel and in the Vatican." She's like, "That's so that's so undignified." And I was kind of leaned in. I was like, "Well, other popes actually ordered they be restored to their original nudity, right? Be restored to their original beauty." And she was completely shocked. She had never heard that before. So it was just, I don't know, it was an interesting topic. And it was around that point where, as I guess you mentioned at the very beginning, started studying theology of the body.
Oh, yeah, that's cool to mark that.
Yeah, but it's just interesting to see, in a history class, and her, I don't want to call it naivety, but, the fact of nudity being within a church or within, sacred art was it was a no-no. Wasn't supposed to happen.
And you kind of got to ask yourself, could something like that happen again? And even as I'm saying that, I'm like, yeah, of course it did happen again in the 70s, and kind of that period where the Catholics almost adopted the iconoclasticism of the Protestants, and we painted over some of our most beautiful murals. Like here in Baton Rouge, St. Joseph's Cathedral, they just painted over all of it.
Yeah.
That was just a catastrophe. The 1970s on Catholic churches and 80s too.
It truly was disheartening. Have you ever seen it was a book that came out, I think it was a centennial celebration book or 50-year book for the Diocese of Baton Rouge.
Oh yeah, do you remember?
And they have some original photos of the cathedral before renovations. It's like a completely different building.
That's so sad to hear that, because the nave, I guess I'm probably getting that wrong, but the back of the altar, where you've got that stone wall, right? It's like Gabbatha, is that the stone pavement? That's what I feel like when I look at the behind the altar, like the harsh stone pavement of the crucifixion, and that wasn't original to the building. It was more of a curved back, and you had stained glass windows, long vertical stained glass windows, and they just let's just put a wall here. Oh God, this is terrible. And then also that time, it wasn't so much iconoclasticism, but I guess kind of an adoption of a un-Eucharistic Protestant, understanding. You started getting the tabernacle defocused, shifting the focus away from it by putting it off to the side or wherever.
Yeah. It's a little jump, but I actually remember when I was a missionary in the Diocese of Houma-Thibodaux, the church that we went to that was by our house was St. Bernadette. And right before we moved into that house, they had done some renovations and completely redid the inside and the interior. And to say it was horrendous is to be generous.
Oh, no.
There was like a wavy glass paneling behind the altar. And then they took the tabernacle from the center and then moved it off into a corner. And put this wavy glass shrouding around the front of it, and it was awful. But the priest there now has since put in a new initiative and completely redid the altar area to where it's all hand carved and wood.
Awesome.
And actually restored it to what it was. I guess what the original intent was supposed to be. Move the tabernacle back, near the altar, and it's drastically different. But again, it's weird to imagine that, for people to want to go to church to be in a sacred space, yet vote and, have this, push to change something from what is not originally sacred. I don't know. It's just a weird feeling.
One of the things that I heard, and keep in mind that this is how it was at St. Joseph's Seminary College, at the Abbey over there, and at many churches. In
that's Covington, right?
Or technically in St. Benedict is actually in its own little city.
Like the
right. But one of the main arguments for moving the tabernacle to one side of the altar or one side of the church is to give people better access to the tabernacle, bringing Christ closer to the people. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with it.
Or at least half the people, right?
It's for people to go in outside of Mass and spend some time with Christ. And this was before a bunch of churches had these perpetual adoration chapels, but they kept the church doors open. And so instead of having them go up on the altar in the sanctuary area, they would move Jesus over to the side, allowing them. That's why you always see kneelers right there, giving them some time to spend with Christ in the tabernacle. But with the development and the implementation of perpetual adoration chapels, there's really no need for it anymore.
That's interesting. That perspective makes me feel a little bit better. Yeah, for me, it's just the church is a recapitulation of the temple, is a recapitulation of the tabernacle of Moses, is a recapitulation of what Moses saw on top of Mount Sinai, and Moses' tabernacle had the Ark of the Covenant, at the very center, that you would process in from the east gate, straight into the Ark of the Covenant. And of course, based on that, the altar was kind of to the side, so that kind of cuts both ways, I guess. Okay, so I got another. That's a whole conversation topic too. We maybe can circle back to that, but I just wanted to say, did y'all hear about Father Jeff Bahi, and Zachary? He just built a new church there.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I know who Father Jeff Bahi is.
And Zachary?
Yeah, y'all, and some of this I'm given for the listener. So Father Jeff Bahi, he is one of our Baton Rouge diocesan priests. He cut a record with Aaron Neville. And when he looked back to his bank account a couple years down the road, he saw he had $2 million. Used that to start Metanoia Manor, which is this amazing shelter for victims of sex trafficking, human trafficking. But so he recently built a new church in Zachary, Louisiana, and he was able to get the altarpiece, the pews, the cabinetry for the sacristy, all that original woodwork he bought from a church, I think it was a decommissioned church in upstate New York. And in that purchase, which I think he spent maybe $40,000 on all that, which to get the cheap stuff in, it would be more expensive than that, much less hand wrought woodwork, right? Which is just priceless these days. But with that price also came the stained glass of that church up in upstate New York. And right as they were about to start taking that down to send it down to Louisiana, package it and send it down, the Historical Society, let's say Rochester or Buffalo, prevented the stained glass from being taken from the building because the exterior of the building had historical significance, and the stained glass was part of the exterior, so they stopped the sale.
Well, dang.
Yeah, well, then come to find out that the new tenant in the church, it became a mosque. And the imam or whatever leader of the congregation put black cloth over all the stained glass windows because they didn't want that. They didn't want that to be seen in their mosque. So, isn't that this is the terrible irony of all that? But he did get a really good deal on the woodwork.
Yeah. And I'll say that's common now, but also St. Pius Parish here in Lafayette Diocese recently had a similar, arrangement. A number of the items around the church, they have different statues of the apostles, and also the baldacchino and the altar section, I believe, were all recovered from a decommissioned church.
That's awesome. Cool.
Yeah. And so, the majority of the building itself is a little more modern. However, a lot of the main articles within the church are recovered from another, and they're very good placings in there.
That would be kind of neat to kind of build a home from things from a decommissioned church. Like I don't know if that's sacrilegious or anything, but for faithful Catholics, to build a home,
it'd be pretty sweet.
From decommissioned church stuff, that would be awesome. Like stained glass windows, church pews, the wood floors. That'd be really neat.
Not to sound weird, but I've actually got a Paschal candle in my living room.
We when they were replacing the roof at St. Mary's here in New Roads, I raided the dumpster. I got all the wood that didn't have termite damage. And we incorporated it into our house. Made bookshelves out of it. And the original St. Mary's, when they were demolishing it, they were just about to throw away all the wood. But I forget the person who did it. But there, y'all might remember on False River, there's a home that has like a lot of windows and the paint's kind of peeling off of it. It's across from like the fire station.
Yes.
And yeah, like a Center for the Arts, kind of right around there.
Okay.
That was made from the windows and the wood from the original St. Mary's.
What?
Yeah, like I mean, how often that sort of thing happened, that people just disposed of things like that, and now these days, reclaimed wood is so precious and expensive. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just so much was lost. Or like when Napoleon III decided to widen the boulevards in Paris, just mowed down whole neighborhoods to make like the Champs-Elysees and stuff like that. Kind of makes you sick.
I know. I'm actually kicking myself. It was a while back. So here, right next to in the Diocese of Lafayette, there's the diocesan office. Right next to that is a school, St. John Paul the Great, which used to be a monastery. I can't remember exactly which order it was.
So the cathedral? That's the one with that the live oak, the really old live oak next to it.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. The cathedral does have the live oak that's like over 400 years old.
Wow.
But not there. So actually, the diocesan office is off of Carmel Drive, which is a little ways out of town. But next to that, it was an old monastery that's now a private school.
Oh, you said JP2 Institute, right?
John Paul the Great.
John Paul the Great. Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah, it's a school, which used to be a monastery / home for religious order. I can't remember which order it was. Wow. But anyways, on the grounds, all of the buildings there are 100 plus years old. Well, the principal and the headmaster at the time, they were trying. It was Peter Fletcher. They were demolishing a old house and barn.
Huh.
And so it was myself and one other friend and like a couple other people. They told us like, look, if you want to salvage any of this wood,
awesome,
we'll give you a couple of days to come in and take whatever you want. After that, we're demolishing it. And so I remember going to help my friend, and we recovered like some beautiful long, I'm talking like 14, 15 foot cypress planks.
They're probably hand hewn, hand planed.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So beautiful, beautiful wood. And I remember helping him harvest a ton of stuff, but I didn't keep much for myself. And now I'm like, man, I should have kept a couple things. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Not just the fact to say like, this is from, this historical building, but I mean, these things again, like can tell how many people have either been in that home or have used that barn, or even the religious brothers, that were part of that property that use those buildings. So much history and memories that are probably there that are tied to that wood.
Everybody, thanks for joining us for the Catholic Nerds podcast, our second episode. Next time, join us. We'll be talking about the holy moment, a concept that helping us grow in our holiness. That should be coming out in next week or so look out for it.
And thank you for listening to the Catholic Nerds talk about some nerdy stuff, and we'll join you next time. Bum
Bum, 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 bum.